The meaning of pluralism made me look in the dictionary for an answer. Many of those who I spoke to on the subject had the look which evokes wonder to the question of what pluralism is. The eyes look up and move left and right, and you just sort of, they're trying to search their memory banks for something to grab onto. Mine hit on the word plural and then ism. We all know when ism is attached to a word, it usually means a state of mind or a category of thinking and acting as a group that thinks alike. In this case, ism is attached to plural. So we have plural, which means more than one or a group attached to ism, and you get, in my mind at least, a group that thinks like or accepts many other groups. The Cambridge Dictionary puts it a little more eloquently. The existence of different types of people who have different beliefs and opinions within the same society, or the belief that the existence of different types of people within the same society is a good thing. So, well, I got the gist of it, crude as it was, but I still like my idea of it being a group that likes or accepts many other groups. This topic has taught me something which I guess I had just taken for granted, that many different types of people, beliefs, and opinions should exist harmoniously, or at least be tolerated, as long as none threatens the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that our Declaration of Independence enshrines. We as Americans grew up with this pluralism from the roots of our founding fathers' words, but that is not so everywhere else in the world. It seems that pluralism has to be fought for and defended. The ideals of our Declaration of Independence did not happen overnight. It had its flickering beginnings in the Magna Carta in the 15th century, and later in the Age of Enlightenment, or the Age of Reason, in the 17th and 18th centuries, where for the first times in the Western world, human rights were taking shape. Many, if not all, of our country's founders were intellectual products of this thinking, which was very threatening to the monarchies of the time, who are not very pluralistic and imposed their rule with an iron thumb. Thomas Jefferson, who is credited with writing the first draft of the Declaration, drew from an even deeper well of philosophy, that of Epicurus of ancient Greece. Epicurus was a religious skeptic and attacked superstition and divine intervention. But his main aim was really just the absence of pain and fear, which to him led to pleasure. Not the physical pleasure as we immediately think, but more of the mind as an intellectual, or the liberty to think. In Jefferson's letter to William Short, whom Jefferson considered an adoptive son, as you say of yourself, I too am an Epicurean. I consider the genuine, not the imputed, doctrines of Epicurus as containing everything rational in moral philosophy, which Greece and Rome have left us. The idea of pluralism evolved through the ages. It is not an easy process, and the word did not exist, I think, until the turn of the 20th century. I can think of at least 4 wars which were fought over pluralism. Our Revolution in the United States, the French Revolution, which battled both monarchies, World War II battling fascism or authoritarianism, and the Indian Revolution led by Mohandas Gandhi battling foreign rule. We still see pluralism evolving, like when our own ideals were challenged in the Civil War, the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King, the rights of the LGBTQ community, and the children of illegal immigrants called Dreamers. Pluralism is easy to define, but it's complicated. As an elder friend and co-worker of mine, Tony Ippolito, once told me, after some complaining on my part, Ed, whoever told you that life was meant to be easy? And it was kind of a shock to me. America is a pluralistic society, and Europe, I think, more so than us, but it is fragile. Our motto is e pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one, is a pluralistic motto. But does it refer to the many states making up the Union, or the different nationalities, or the different religions? The intent in 1782, when it was adopted, was the former, many states, one country. But it is easy to see other unintentional or maybe co-intentional meanings. Our country was born out of an insistence of fundamental human, political, and religious rights, which were in the background of every state. Still, we had challenges. Despite our high ideals, we still struggle with the remnants of genocide of the North Native Americans and the brutal treatment of the once enslaved African Americans. Little did the Age of Enlightenment intellectuals know that what they were unleashing, not only on the ruling classes, but on society coming to grips with new freedoms and demanding more and more as time went on. I'm inclined to think of it like a reverse Pandora's box. As you may know, Pandora opened the casket given to her by Zeus. She released evil into the world, which ended the golden age of humans. She immediately slammed it shut, but it was too late. With a reverse Pandora's box, goodness and human rights were released into the world, opening the age of enlightenment and reason. And it has evolved ever since. You still see despots and dictators today trying to close the lid on it. I think the hypothesis here is that a pluralistic society is a better society. Felix Guattari says, it is a matter not only of tolerating another group, another ethnicity, another sex, but also of a desire for dissensus, otherness, difference. Accepting otherness is a question not so much of right as of desire. This acceptance is possible precisely on the condition of assuming the multiplicity within oneself. And Shelby says, I hope we are moving toward a time when we don't just tolerate people from different cultures and religions, but appreciate the ways we are all different and are all the same. We know that nature thrives on pluralism, so why shouldn't a society? The formula for a good, healthy prairie is one that is diverse in the plants that grow there. You see in botany that anywhere there is a monoculture, there are problems. We see it with super farms producing only one crop year after year, and each year requiring more pesticides and fertilizer to grow them. It's just not sustainable. The costs rise to produce a crop which is less nutrient. Farmers at least now know that rotating crops is a good practice, and many are beginning to realize and want better and more sustainable growing practices, because not only is it more economical, but it is more healthy. The problem with invasive species is that they eventually take over and choke out the native species. The biological problem with that is they themselves will eventually become a monoculture and probably die out from their own success, which in the long run hurts the land and the other species it supports. The World Health Organization says biodiversity plays a crucial role in human nutrition through its influence on world food production as it ensures the sustainable productivity of soils and provides genetic resources for all crops, livestock, and marine species harvested for food. Access to a sufficiency of nutritious variety of food is a fundamental determinant of health. Anywhere you look, from the macro to the micro, and, society, biological diversity is a good thing. Society seems to be better when ideas are shared and the difference is respected and even encouraged. In isolation, there is no life. Outside perspectives often lead to a better decision-making process. There is a trend called groupthink, where people who tend to think alike isolate themselves from others and tend to defend any dissension. This can often lead to poor decision-making. The Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, led by the Kennedy administration, was a complete failure because it did not have a cabinet who was willing to stand up to the challenge and challenge the risks. In another case, an engineer who designed the thrusters for the Challenger space shuttle knew that the O-rings were not designed to function below 40 degrees. He tried to convince the team responsible to stop the launch due to a frigid forecast for the launch date. But because they were isolated and more interested in meeting a schedule, he was unsuccessful. When the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, Kennedy, having learned from the Bay of Pigs, insisted on getting diverse viewpoints and encouraging outspokenness and frankness of different opinions. The world held its breath, but thanks to some rational thinking on both sides, a win-win solution was found, and the situation was de-escalated. Daniel Eck of the Pluralism Project said, "The most important of our two-letter words is we." Who do we mean when we say we? In our analysis of what we see happening in the world, we need words to describe the range of new initiatives and relationships that are cropping up profusely in cities, towns, and colleges. Pluralism is such a word. It is not a doctrine, it's a process. The thing I love about UUs is that they are pluralistic about their beliefs. Sure, it's a harder thing to get your head around. BR is a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. It's temple, all space. It's shrine, the good heart. It's creed, all truth. It's ritual, works of love. I love these words from one of our hymns, but they're not exactly an elevator speech going to convince someone to join. Other religious institutions offer a path and usually a reward, sort of like a carrot and stick approach. We do not. We say it's up to you to find your own truth, and we accept you for doing so. We are pluralistic. We offer many paths, and the reward is a better life, more an act of striving for heaven on earth, if you will. It is challenging to have to think for yourself, to believe that we can take on questions of the divine and human conditions. To do so alone in isolation is probably impossible. But in a pluralistic congregation, where through discussion and comparison, the outcome is more likely to lead to something of personal meaning to pursue. A religion that does not draw upon the wisdom from other beliefs and cultures is not evolving and is in danger of the groupthink syndrome, where differences can justify the grounds for killing another and do it in God's name. We know this has gone on for millennia. Thomas Keating, a Trappist monk, said, "In the world that lies ahead, religious pluralism is going to penetrate all cultures. I don't know whether we can make progress without a contemplative practice that alerts us to our own biases, prejudices, and self-centered programs for happiness, especially when they trample on other people." Some are waking up to that hypocrisy and rejecting religion altogether, while others are doubling down on the one way is right religions where the ends justify the means, and all with the blessing of his unseen authority. Unitarian Universalist congregations are a haven from that. The idea that we can make a sacred space where all that is sacred is wise and wise is held together is transformative and uplifting. We can almost call it sacred pluralism. We can feel a benefit and holiness befitting our own nature as it is in the present moment. And the present moment, some say, is where eternity lies. The last lines of the previous reading from Jack Reimer were, "In isolation, there is no life." While Jack Reimer was referring to an isolation from a divine God, the beauty of our religion is such that we can see divinity and God just about anywhere you look, because we draw from earth-centered religions that say spirit is everywhere. Whether we believe in God or not, there is always something we can turn to as our rock for grounding. So we can replace God with universe, nature, spirit, self, reason, humanity, you name it. It is in your heart, and it will evolve as you do. Whatever the mystery is, we are a part of it. Whatever reality is, we do not have to believe it or understand it. It is still a part of us, just like so many other things that we are not consciously aware of. Nature is not meant to be isolated. It cannot sustain itself, neither can people. Eventually, we have to realize this because we must somehow become sustainable to survive. In isolation, there is no life. By being pluralistic, I think we can avoid that pitfall, but don't expect it to be easy, and don't expect it to stop from evolving. This ends my sermon, but I'm curious if what you think of pluralism or what keeps you grounded, or if you have any comments otherwise. So please come up here, and if you're so willing to comment. Any takers? Okay, but you have to come up here so everybody can hear. And oh, yeah, we got a few minutes.
So my name is Linda, and I guess what has really struck home in the last couple of years in regards to pluralism has been the personal work and the group work that I have been doing, looking at my own biases and my own blinders when it comes to anti-racism. And I say that because I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I grew up with a very strong Christian ideal that Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. You know the song Black and Yellow, Red and White, they are precious in his sight. So I held to an understanding and a belief that I was pluralistic and that I was coming from a place of anti-racism always. And what I've learned is that my pluralism, as I understood it, really wasn't broad enough. And even as I thought of myself as a UU, when I went from being in the Christian church and then kind of floated in graduate school for a long time and opened my mind, even as a UU, and I've met lots of UUs who think we don't want to think of ourselves as racist. And that's so hard to own and come to understand that our biases are so inherent and ingrained. And so my ideals of pluralism are what call me forward, but I also have to recognize how deeply my humility needs to go, and that my humility needs to be part of my or one of my greatest guiding stars. And that's really hard because I kind of have attitudes. I have attitudes. I have opinions, and I have strong convictions, and um, sometimes holding those with that star of humility as my guide has meant I've had to re-examine them. So pluralism has invited me into a deeper space of humility.
Thank you, Linda. I think we are now doing our offertory. Give me a sec. Offertory.